Welcome to the Dunk City Podcast.
Change direction by It is a Trojan tundra. USC is on to the Sweet 16.
Okay, welcome back to another episode of the Dunk City Podcast, brought to you by USCBasketball.com. Chris Houston here with Mark Backstrom, and what a momentous day. We are recording this on a Monday, April 22nd. Has been a smorgasbord of USC recruiting news. Let's just get right into it. Earlier today, Rashaun Agee of Bowling Green committed to the Trojans. He's a 6'8", 225-pound senior out of Chicago. Averaged 13.3 points, 9.9 boards last year. Shot 57% from the field. And then later on in the day, Elohim of Sierra Canyon, the first high school player to commit to Eric Musselman at USC. He, having been let out of his letter of intent with Arkansas, he has committed to USC. A big rangy player. We'll talk to him about him more later. And then to cap off the night, Chibuzo Agbo of Boise State, 6'7", 226-pound guard wing, averaged 13.7, 5 boards, shot 40% from three-point land, really good three-point shooter. He made it the third commitment of the day for the Trojans. Now this was coming off of an even, a really good day the day before, where St. Thomas of Northern Colorado also committed. So the commits have been coming fast and furious for Eric Musselman. The Trojans now have 9 scholarship players when you include returners Harrison Hornery and Brandon Gardner. Hey, speaking of Brandon Gardner, Mark, did you happen to see Brandon Gardner's dunk from this past year's practice?
Yeah, that was something. My goodness, guy's got some length in his appendages. Apparently, yes.
Yeah, it almost looked like one of those fake videos. Right, like somehow they cut it so that he jumped. And then the next thing the next frame was him landing. That's how fast it was. It was over Josh Morgan, pretty good shot blocker. So he's obviously back, and it's interesting that so there's 9 scholarship players, and there are 4 slots left. There are some names out there, of course, Trent Perry, who USC is trying to get back. Andy Enfield over at SMU is trying to get him. He just took a trip to Virginia, and old Hoops reporting legend Dick Weiss claims that Virginia is the leader in the clubhouse. I don't know how plugged in Hoops Weiss is anymore, but without a doubt, there's a chance Virginia can get Trent Perry. But a few other things happened recently. Another bit of news: Will Conroy, associate head coach over at Washington, has been hired by Eric Musselman to be an assistant coach at USC. He went to Garfield High in the LA area, and he is now at USC. And one of the players who USC nearly snagged in the recruiting cycle this past year was Zoom Diallo of Prolific Prep up in Napa. He chose the Washington Huskies, but now it appears he is non-committal. Apparently the main point of contact in recruiting him was none other than Will Conroy. So now he's at USC. Can Will Conroy get Zoom Diallo to come to USC? Will they be able to get Trent Perry? It does seem they need to get one more primary ball handler to sort of help carry the load. And there's a couple opportunities out there, a couple potential players who could be coming. And, but after these last couple days, it's kind of breathtaking to see how much talent has been accumulated in this quick span of time.
Yeah, I'm wondering, did House of Victory just kind of have an open house that concluded this morning or something?
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe it was one of those club memberships or you
recruiting
get,
drive.
Not like a referral program or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
So someone got to write that down. It's not a bad idea. A little referral program. So yeah, it's interesting. So the USC now has 9 scholarship players, like we talked about. These players are a lot like. Well, first of all, they're nothing like what USC fans are used to with the Andy Enfield era. Andy liked kind of athletic bigs, lean, angular, skilled basketball players who sort of flowed, I think, more than exploded. And there's benefits of all kinds of different players playing college basketball. This group of players tend to be more straight line explosive, maybe not as like overall as flexible and athletic, but definitely like explosive, full of energy, and they can all score. There's just a lot of guys coming in who are coming into USC right now who are used to putting up big numbers. And we're going to go, throw it back to you for a minute, and then we're going to go one by one through the players, because we didn't talk about some of the other players who've come to USC since we last had our podcast, which was only Josh Cohen at the time had committed to USC. So, Mark, let's throw it over to you.
Okay. Yeah. One thing that stands out to me before we get into any specific player is, especially of that first group now of the last couple, Rashaun Agee, I just got his stats and I haven't dug in too much. And then you're going to have to help me with the kid from Boise.
Chibuzo Agbo?
Yes, Agbo. You literally broke news to me just this evening on that, so I haven't had a chance to dig into that. But if we look at some of these other guys, Matt Noling from Yale, Bryce Pope, and even just going back to Josh Cohen, that first group of guys that Musselman got, they all come from really efficient offenses. Last year, UMass team BPO 100 was over 50.6, which I think probably would have been about, I think maybe second or third at worst in the Pac-12. Yale 52.7 BPO 100. I think that's right there with Arizona. Although I don't think anybody will mistake the styles of the two teams, but very efficient. UCSD, Bryce Pope 52.5. Penn, 51.2. Northern Colorado, 52.6, where St. Thomas comes from. So I don't know if this is by design or this is just the kind of player that catches Musselman's eye, but these guys all come from very efficient offenses, which I think it's interesting. There's no good stats on a bad team guy.
Yeah, exactly. And these are also guys who are very much in an NBA style, right? They are aggressive to the rim. They're going to either hit you deep or bring you down low, for the most part. Mm-hmm. Like the wing. There's lots of wing. It's a very wing heavy class. Agee is a post player, but St. Thomas is a wing. Guard. Noling is an undersized forward, but he can play on the perimeter some. Pope is obviously a guard. Slackert's a guard. And Agbo is a wing. And so is Elohim. So a lot of guys who are in that 6'3" to 6'7", 6'8" range, mm-hmm. who are just going to attack the basket or shoot threes. And there are a few guys with some pretty good mid-range games, but it's definitely explode, cut, try to get some, score through the harm and try to get to the foul line. And so it's just, to me, that's the consistent thread with all these guys.
Yeah. The other thing when I'm, bigger picture, when I took from the videos that were posted on the website about Musselman, I'm kind of working from a framework of, he said in one of the videos, our goal is 200 passes a game. And I'm just kind of using that as a framework to see, okay, using that as a starting point in pace and space, built upon that. Who seems to fit in there the best from a mm-hmm. from what I can discern from a metric scouting standpoint, if you will. Yeah. So I thought what might be interesting is I've seen some highlights of Cohen. I've seen about 5 or 10 seconds of Pope, but if I can just walk through the metrics of each of these players and then just give you what I based on some metric scouting what I think their game is, and you can kind of tell me. Right, wrong, or indifferent in terms of my interpretations.
Let's do it.
Okay. So we'll start with Rashaun Agee, the gentleman out of Bowling Green. Not an awesome BPO 100. I think that his BPO 100 is more in line with what we're used to seeing with your less than elite big men at 49.9. Little elevated turnover ratio, which elevated for all players, but pretty much in line with with a typical big. What really stands out to me is his rebounds per 40. As a junior, there's a missing year here. He must have had a redshirt year. His first year at Bowling Green, he had one season where he played one game at New Mexico State. The free season. So his first season at Bowling Green, rebounds per 40 of 12.5, and then last season 14.4. I'm not seeing a lot of great rebounding stats from anybody else on this team so far. So
there's one other guy with really good numbers.
Okay. Well, you might be breaking news to me here.
No, well, these are all new guys. So it's just, we're getting to know them.
Sure. So, I think that this is going to be a gentleman that I don't see a lot of offense running through him. He seems like a fine scorer, but again, I don't see him as a first option, but definitely somebody that can probably finish inside. If you're getting 14 rebounds a game, I think you know how to use your lower body, and you've got some strength up top, and probably a finisher, maybe a shorter but more complete Kajani, if that's maybe a decent comp. Maybe not the passer though.
Yeah, I actually think this is actually I think you're pretty spot on with what you're looking at here. Like he sort of feasted offensively. He sort of feasted on the weaker part of the schedule, or at least early on in the year. He sort of tailed off toward the end of the year. But there's a few things that you can't take away from him, which is that he's got really good hands. He's got a great feel around the rim. He gets a lot of he scores a lot off of putbacks and just getting good position, offensive rebounds, so on and so forth. He's legitimately a very good rebounder, as you've noted. You're right. I really don't think the offense needs to go through him. I don't think it will be. He is he's a pretty decent ball handler. He's not going to be a guy who's going to be flying hard in transition. But I think he's going to get a lot of his work done in the half court set. And I think he's potentially a starter for this year. And, one of the things about all these guys, they're all seniors for the most part, except for Elohim coming in. These guys have been around the block. These guys are physically strong, mentally capable. So he's definitely an early favorite to start at potentially the 5, depending on who else we have coming in. He could be an undersized 5, but he's kind of a strong kid. So he's definitely a good get, as they say on the internets.
Yeah, and again, one of the things that we need to adjust to is I would have an idea about how this feels like it would play in the Pac-12 now in the Big Ten. Mm-hmm. Don't know.
Yeah, he's in the sense that if you think the Big Ten is kind of a grinding conference, I think he works pretty well for his style. He is a grinder. He's got decent quickness. He's got his footwork is a little sloppy. Like, I haven't seen full games of him yet, but I can imagine he got called for a few travels. He's a little loose with his footwork. But he finishes down low. He's a hard worker. And if he can commit to just being a rebounder and defender, then he's going to be a big plus for this basketball team.
Yeah, one more thing about him. Second on the team in Buscar, and with all these transfers coming from lower conferences, one of the things I definitely want to see is an identity for each of these guys that really separates them as a team leader in one specific attribute. Like for him, it's obviously the rebounding. He just dominated that. And second in the on the team in Biscar, which is a volume stat. So that's promising. Again, if we're not relying on that, and if that's just found money that we get when we get points from him, all the better.
Yeah. All right. So we like Rashaun Agee. I think that he's definitely going to be a big help for the squad. Who's your next player?
Matt Nolan at Yale.
Okay.
To my prior point about standing out, I'm a little unsure of what I'm looking at here with Mr. Nolan. Really efficient player, 59.4 BPO last season, which is nuts, and this is crazy. His first 3 years, all at Yale, BPO 100s of 58.6, 59.2, and 59.4. That's impressive. Now, here's where my mind gets a little bent. Not a great free throw shooter, only 63% for his career. But really good field goal percentage from two. In his career, almost 61% from two. Not a good outside shooter, so I'm having a hard time figuring out his game, and he does not strike me as much of a rebounder last season in the Ivy League, less than 7 rebounds per 40. So I've got countervailing wins. I've got a very high 2-point percentage, and I've got a low rebounding percentage. So this is the mystery man to me in terms of what we're getting in terms of style of play. So can you help me out with this one?
Yeah, and it works out nicely because what you are describing is what's typically called a glue guy. Matt Nolan is going to be this team's glue guy. I don't think he'll start. I think he's the guy that comes in, gives you some good hard cuts at the basket, gives you some decent production in ISO, and who is just going to, scrap for buckets whenever he can, and he's gonna hit a lot of buckets. He's an undersized player. He's 6'6", 200. Imagine Kobe Johnson without the outside game, like a good Kobe, like when Kobe was good Kobe, but without the outside game, cutting to the basket, occasionally posting up. Sort of, they're similar sizes. He has more of a developed post-up game than Kobe because Kobe didn't really get a chance to develop it. But when those times that he the little turnarounds and runners, and just cutting on the baseline, back cuts that Kobe was good at, Nolan is also good at. So he's going to be, so he's going to play that role, I think, of just sort of, you need 5 points tonight? Okay, great. You need 15? Okay, maybe I'll try to get that for you. He's not coming out there looking to dominate the ball.
Almost 3 assists per game too. And he doesn't turn the ball over at all.
Yeah, plays within himself. Obviously, he's a Yale guy, so he's smart. Or we can assume he's smart. We can assume he's not dumb. Let's just say that. And not last year he didn't have as good a year as the year before, when he was a unanimous All Ivy League selection. He was averaged almost 14 points a game, shot 63%, and was actually had a pretty good year from three-point land, 33%. Last year was a huge drop-off for him from three-point when he only shot 14%. But the previous 2 years, he did shoot 33 and then 50% as a freshman. Mm-hmm. So maybe the idea is that, hey, this was an anomaly, or maybe like the comparisons to Kobe Johnson are a little too eerie there with the 3-point percentage. But so he's the glue guy, Matt Nolan. You need these guys on the team. Not everybody's going to be the starter. Not everyone's going to be the guy coming in averaging 20. So unfortunately, when you watch highlights, I haven't watched these full games of these guys yet, so I don't know. You don't really see many defensive highlights for a lot of these players. So right now, I don't know what their defensive capabilities are. So, but offensively, glue guy.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Next, Bryce Pope out of UCSD.
Okay.
like I said, really offensive, a really efficient offensive system that he's coming out of. BPO 100 of 51.4 last season for Bryce. Again, I've got almost a complete picture of him, and then there's one thing that just doesn't make sense to me. So, good BPO 100, great free throw shooter, almost 82% last season, over 80% for his career. Okay, 3-point shooter at 33%, where he'll have, sounds like, that kind of guy will have a game or two where they are awesome, and then a couple where you're like, oh boy. But
yeah, well, he shot 38%. He shot 38% at home, 27% on the road. So there you go.
That's illuminating. That's nice and can be a concern, both.
Right.
48% on twos, which that's where I'm seeing some of the gap in the narrative here. Really takes care of the ball. Turnover percentage the last 3 years: 7.7%, 6.7%, 6.3. That is very low for a guard. Mm-hmm. But with the low shooting percentage, I'm thinking this guy's kind of I'm kind of feeling maybe like a Bryce Love of the Big West ?
I don't think he's. I think you're on the right track. I don't think he's that extreme, because first of all, he's even at shooting 42%. He's still a better shooter than Bryce Love. Not Bryce Love, Caleb Love.
Pardon me. Yes.
Yeah. Bryce Love was the running back for Stanford, right?
Yeah.
Heisman runner-up. Okay. Yeah. So Caleb Love I think he shot 38%, and I think he finished the season like 3 of 17 or some crazy number, 3 of 29 or some crazy number. Just really tanked it toward the end. But I do see some elements of this guy's more of a scorer than a shooter. The funny thing about this game, so if you ever played basketball growing up in the 80s, let's say, there was always this older dude from like the 70s with like a headband and like high knee socks. And he would launch these three-pointers, or not three-pointers. He would launch these jump shots that were sort of like forward. When he would jump, like basically right now when you shoot a jump shot, they jump up, right? And they shoot. But these guys would like jump forward when they shot their jump shots, if you catch me. And if you go look at highlights of Bryce Pope, he sort of like, when he shoots his threes, he sort of launches himself. He sort of like careens forward with his body. Slight jackknife. He doesn't really elevate straight up. He sort of elevates forward at an angle. So it kind of creates this sort of wild element, or at least wild-looking element to his shot. And maybe that's, why he's not a consistent outside shooter, just there's too much going on. Mm-hmm. You get a sense, a lot of energy, a lot of like drive, a lot of just relentless energy from the guy. I think that's probably what Musselman's looking for. Is just a guy with a lot of energy, a guy who can just play hard, and he plays hard on offense. He's not necessarily the most efficient player, but he's gonna score.
Do you see him as a starter? Possibly. It sounds like maybe.
I mean, I could see him starting some games. It's still too early. We don't know really who's on the team yet. There's still some guys who could be coming, but I would say, yeah, right now he might be a starter.
Okay. And just to, again, does this player stand out on his prior team? And really, that UCSD team, again, very efficient offense. 2 players. They had one inside player. His last name is Tate Jones. The first one, his first name gets the better of me. But it's definitely an inside out, two-man team here. Both had Buscars of 93. The big man was a little more efficient, but I think that if I can get a feel for Bryce Pope is definitely somebody that if you're game planning for he's topic 1, if not 1A, depending on who the opponent is.
And I want to say that even though he looks like he's playing out of control, he's obviously in control most of the time. He only averaged 1 personal foul per game in 33 starts, and he played 36 minutes per game. So you play 36 minutes and you're averaging 1 foul per game, then he's playing without fouling, so that's good. I haven't seen him play full games. I don't know if he plays any defense at all. Maybe that's why he only gets 1 foul. But you're not looking at a lot of player control fouls. He's not charging into people very much. So he's not throwing the ball away.
Exactly. That's the thing which makes me think he's a smart player. It's, you take care of the ball like that, you're smart.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm kind of guessing he might be the kind of guy who really shoots well in practice. I guess, not to your point now, shoots well at home. When you have that kind of free throw percentage, I bet he just crushes it in practice every day, and so they're fine with him taking as many three-pointers as he wants.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, too, is even though he is only a 27% three-point shooter on the road, he is a nearly 87% free throw shooter on the road.
Jeez.
So he is tough as nails in those situations. Okay, so Bryce Pope, again, positive addition to the team. He's a scorer. I mean, the guy's average is a very consistent scorer. He averaged 18.3 this past year, 18.4 the year before. All his field goal, 3-point free throw percentages were all roughly around the same, or at least in the same ballpark. So he's been very consistent. You kind of know what you're going to get with him.
Yeah, and just one last thing on him. Nice career trajectory here in terms of his boost score. First year, 19. Second year, 49. Third year, 71. And last year, 93. So real nice growth, too. Takes it to the next level and really could be something.
Yeah. All right. Well, who's next on the roster here?
All right. The gentleman from Penn, Clark, is it Slackert? Slackert. Okay. I guess it's not pronounced with a question mark like I pronounced it either.
Correct. It's more of an exclamation point.
Okay. Slackert.
That's right.
Team leader in Buscar by a wide margin for Penn last season. A good or efficient offensively Penn team. BP 100 of 54.8 last season, which is really good. Made a big jump from last year. Last year he was only at a 49.2. Really good shooter. Shooting almost 86% from the line for his career. Let's put it this way. Last year was his worst year from the line at a mere 82%. Shot 42% from three last season, 53, almost 54% from two. So just a good shooter. Turnover percentage a little higher than the others, but about in line with what you're want to see from a guard at 11%. Not a ton of assists, so strikes me as he was probably the off guard to somebody else running the show. I don't know if I have a USC comp for this. He seems like maybe when I saw these stats, my first thought was going back to maybe to our new coach, new assistant coach, Will Conroy. He seems maybe what Washington was hoping to get when they signed. Here's a deepish cut. Ryan Appleby. That's one of those. That's one of those names that's been thrown onto the just the pile of names that have come across over the years. I don't remember.
I do not remember what. I remember the name. I don't remember anything about him.
Just awesome shooter. You could not leave him alone, and that's kind of his epitaph in his entire resume.
Wow, that's a pretty good resume. Awesome. All right, that's a great thing on your gravestone. Awesome shooter, couldn't leave him alone.
So, does this sound like Mr. Slackert, just a more actualized version of you get this great shooter coming in, you're hoping he can just, really, really carry you. And I mean, he carried the team last season to the extent that they had offense. It seems to be his show.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Slackert. There was again, going back to how a lot of USC basketball fans or a lot of fans of USC don't really follow college basketball, and they think that okay, so USC got Cohen and they got Slackert and they got Bryce Pope, and it was worried about getting too many white guys. It was the big worry, right? It was what people were saying on the internet, which is silly because there's just a lot of good players of black players, white players out there. I mean, there's not a whole lot of I just don't. It's a silly thing, right? So, but the point being is that Clark Clark Slackert's a really good player, and I think he's going to be pretty good for USC. I mean, he's almost a 50. He's a 50-40-80 guy, almost, right?
Yeah.
And he's played against some really good level of competition. He scored 17 on Kentucky, for example. He didn't necessarily go crazy from three, but he had 17 against Kentucky. He got hurt against Houston and played only 6 minutes. Against Villanova, he scored 11, had 5 rebounds, 4 assists. He's acquitted himself pretty well against pretty good competition, and I think that he's going to be a pretty good player for USC. And again, a guy who knows how to score, scoring point guard. Right now, I think the season starts. I think he's the starting point guard.
Really?
Yeah. Right now.
Wow.
The season starts. He's the starting point guard for sure. 100%.
Interesting. Okay.
Now, again, we might get someone else in.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he's the starting point guard right now. And I think he's a good starting point guard. I see people on the internet saying, well, Slackert and Pope and Cohen, these guys are not, are Big Ten level players. And it's like, hey, I mean, I don't know if people, it's like, have they actually watched the Big Ten?
And I think to a degree, specifically we USC fans, this is not to throw shade at anybody, but this is the case for me. If to the extent I watched Big Ten games, it was the top teams. I was not watching a lot of Maryland and Rutgers games.
Yeah.
There's a lot of context that's missing for that assessment.
Is the Big Ten a point guard league? Like, who are these great point guards in the Big Ten?
Mm-hmm.
Slackert's probably as good as like half the point guards in the Big Ten. And sure, he's from the Ivy, right? He's one of the best players in that league, right? And so it's like you can't average 18 points in that league without being a pretty good basketball player.
Exactly. And to my point about, is this a player that stands out in one particular attribute? I mean, an amazing scorer. Will he be an amazing scorer in the Big Ten? To be determined. But, I can't imagine that somebody that's at that level of being a standout in that particular skill is just won't get it, it will not be a factor in the Big Ten. And it's not like he has only one skill. I mean, this is a more well-rounded, player. I'm guessing just statistically than like the two that you mentioned.
Yeah, I think that he is. He's not going to score 18 points a game in the Big Ten. I don't think, even though his trajectory's still continuing upward. I don't think he's going to score 18 points per game in the Big Ten. I don't think he's going to need to score 18 points for this team.
Yeah.
He might occasionally need to. He might occasionally do so. But I think playing for Penn, maybe he needed to score more, so maybe he wasn't as much of an assist guy. Maybe he's now freed up to be more of an assist guy. But the thing that he's always going to give you is great shooting. Like, he's a sharpshooter. He's going to give you great outside shooting and good free throw shooting. And he's going to handle the ball.
Yeah.
So,
good.
So I think he's I think he's gonna be a pretty good point guard. I'm a fan of this kid.
Now, I don't know. I'm kind of curious, but I don't know how many players in the Big Ten averaged 18 points a game. I guess maybe. Well, I'm sure Edie did. Maybe one or two more. So it's not like that's a table stakes for being a good conference team. But if there is one that I say might be capable, and this could be a stretch, but notwithstanding the late commits that we got today, the one gentleman that I was most interested to see based on just the metrics is St. Thomas from Northern Colorado. My goodness. My mouth is watering just looking at these numbers here. BPO 100 to 53.3. Again, for a good offensive program as a team, 52.6. So, a really good player in a really good system. Some of these numbers are just ridiculous. 57% from 2, 33% from 3, which is not awesome, but good enough considering that he's clearly a shooter. almost 87% from the line last season.
Yeah.
His turnover. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going. Yeah, I was just seconding your statement.
Turnover percentage went down from 20% last season to 12.5% this most recent season. Mm-hmm. Rebounds per 40 of 11.3. I mean, I'm looking at this. This guy sounds like he was the Dominique Wilkins of the conference. My goodness.
Well, this is the guy I was talking about earlier. You're talking about rebounders coming in.
Yeah, I kind of don't want to. Great, he can rebound. I almost want to put him as a do not. I want to lock him up like a veal and just make sure he doesn't get damaged here. I mean, the guy just offers so much. God bless him. I love rebounders. I love the guys that do the dirty work, and whatever we get from him, great. But man, he just seems when I see that combination of shooting, scoring, and rebounding and taking care of the ball, the first thing I think is just very skilled athlete, athletic, but very skilled at basketball too.
Yeah. He had a huge jump from his second year, averaged 3.2 points per game. He only played 14 games, so I think he was hurt, but then jumped to almost 20 points per game, 19.7, like you said. Also 1.7 steals, also is a pretty good steal number. Oh, yeah, this guy, I've watched him. He's kind of an offensive machine. Has a large repertoire of ways to score. He can obviously shoot it. He can drive it. He can put his back to the basket. He's got a little bit of everything, and he rebounds. But definitely St. Thomas, I think, is slated to be a starter on this team right now.
Yeah, how tall is he? Was he 6'6"?
He's listed at 6'7".
Okay. Not to be the diction police here, but I will take issue with a little bit of everything. I see a lot of some. More than just a little bit and a lot of things here. I'm metrically in love, if that's an actual phrase. I can't wait to see this guy. My gosh. I mean, guys that play defense and can score like this are just.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm swooning.
Yeah. Well, Chibuzo Agbo was second on the Broncos last year in scoring, 13.7 points per game, 5 rebounds, shot 45%. He is a 40. Actually, he shot 41% from 3-point land last year. He's a career 39% free 3-point shooter. He's a 6'7" wing, pretty athletic. He started out first 2 years at Texas Tech. You're gonna like this guy. He's a very much a Musselman type, slasher, shooter, scorer. Explosive, get to the rim, get fouled. Strong player, plays through contact. Similar. Bryce Pope's the same way. St. Thomas is the same way. Agee's the same way. Guys who play through contact. Guys who are a little bit stronger than their counterparts. Maybe not as skilled as we're used to seeing from, he's not Drew Peterson. Right, but he is stronger than Drew Peterson and more straight line explosiveness. So, and you see that up and down this new roster. So very much, Agbo is a great example of sort of the Musselman way of doing things at USC.
Yeah. One other thing, just going back to I have to say this about St. Thomas. So. Just for some reference, Boogie last season, his Buscar was 92.6, and he was injured for some of the season, but still extremely productive. Just for context, St. Thomas Buscar last season was 120. So wow. Just lighting up the big sky. I kind of want to, I don't know, if there's one guy's highlights I want to watch, it's his. Yeah. Going back to Agbo then, I want to just kind of mention when I did the column going over my impression of 3 coaches. My take on his coach at Boise State was Leon Rice, was that their offenses were good, but very rarely great or seriously above average. And I'm wondering surrounded by all this talent, that could seriously elevate his game too.
Yeah.
Might have been a little, I don't know if I'd say constrained, but maybe just a little, far from realizing the best version of himself there.
Yeah, well, he's one of these guys. He can run, he can shoot. He's gonna have a lot of freedom to do stuff, and he's gonna have as good a chance as any to be a focal point of this team. So, really deep team full of guys who are like 6'7", 6'8", and I've always found those types of teams that are filled with ball handlers who are big and who can shoot and who can slash at the rim are teams that are just really hard to deal with come March, which, and of course Musselman's great at coming up with those types of teams. But you're looking back to like the Tim Floyd first tournament team for Tim Floyd with Gabe Pruitt and Nick Young and Lod Stewart and Taj Gibson. Not the biggest team, but athletic, slashers, long, explosive to the rim type guys. Good, good shooters. So yeah, I mean, I could just see the team kind of shaping up that way. It's just a good collection. We have a couple. We've gone over all the players, right? I think.
Yeah, we covered Cohen before.
Yeah. We had a couple of questions on the board. Somebody asked, Trojan 2011 asked, one thing I'm very curious about is who the starting point guard will be and what the depth will be at that position. Well, right now there's 3 spots left. USC is still trying to get Trent Perry. They're still trying to get Zoom Diallo. If there's another point guard out there, I'm not aware of who USC is angling for. I do know that if there's no real point guards left. I mean, Ian Martinez was one USC was looking at, but he has decided to return to Utah State. It seems like a great chance for Trent Perry to come in, and they've got Slackert, who's not a true point, but he would be an excellent like John to Trent Perry's Punch. To go back to the TV show Chips, just kind of like a veteran cop, kind of sheltering the rookie. And I think that if Trent Perry did come to USC, this is a good situation because he's got all these veterans around him, and he would be able to play sort of a limited point guard role, I think, in this kind of situation.
So backup seems to be a function of Diallo / Perry.
Yeah, and that's the question: is how, Diallo's a true point guard, and he's the quote unquote bigger recruit. He's probably a guy who wants to be one and done. I can imagine he'd be the kind of guy who would test out the portal waters before too long if he didn't go pro. I like Perry better as a player, as an overall player, just the intangibles that he brings. Diallo was on a star-studded high school team that, he sort of got lost in the shuffle there, but he's obviously really talented. Both those guys would be great, but they're probably not going to get both. One, it is noteworthy that Ian Martinez decided to go back to Utah State. It's possible that he has wind of either Perry or Diallo going to USC. But we'll just have to wait and see the next few days and see what happens with that spot. But I think with 3 spots left, USC could definitely use another point guard, and I'd say another big, like a real big, someone with some size to be able to defend other really big bigs, because there are some big Hanyaks in the Big Ten, as Steve Lavin likes to call them.
Yeah, that would be nice if Martinez not coming was a sign of that. Martinez just lit us up one year. Oh my! I think when Kristoviak was still there, maybe his last season.
Yeah,
man. Jeez, that guy when he was on, watch out.
Yeah. So, okay, that's sort of the wrap up of all the news that has come out. It's funny, me and Mark were texting recently, and I said, I think we had 5 players on the roster at the time. I said, as soon as we get to over 50%, meaning to 7, we can do a pod. And now we're at 10, like a day and a half later or a day later. So we're up to 10 scholarships just like that. It's going to be, I want to just like kind of close with sort of like a reflection on this crazy new sports world where it is kind of fun to see, you know, who's going to be on the team during this time period. But it's going to be interesting too to watch these guys play, because we're like going to get to know them like on the fly. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of a little bittersweet in a sense, because it's really hard to. I wonder how quickly a connection can be made to this team with the fans, because I think every team had its own personality. Every team had its own connection with the fans. I know, like, my wife's been watching USC basketball for a few years now, since she's known me, and you know, she knows all the players. Like, she follows them. She knows the team's personality. She knows when the player is sulking. Right. And I guess she'll pick that up just like we all will. But it is interesting, just like I know it's like a antiquated idea, but the whole idea of having, like, you know, loyalty to a school or being interested in being at a school because it's a good place to be. And like, I'm kind of, I still can't get over the idea that, what is it? It's almost May. We're like a week from May, and kids are still like deciding where they're going to be going to school in the next fall, college. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, like, I remember, you know, when I was a senior in high school, like, you know, if you didn't have your applications in, you know, if you didn't know by like middle of the senior year, you know, you weren't going to get your place. You know, how do you prepare for that with like just on the fly like that? It just seems like a weird. I just will never get used to the idea that people are going to these schools to play basketball and they have to still go to class. And, you know, it is in most of their best interest to go get a degree. And there's just, it's almost completely out of it's not in the equation anymore for most of these guys.
Yeah, true. Yeah. But in fairness, not to slight you, but I think these gentlemen bring in more revenue to the school than you or I did.
Without a doubt. I guess what I'm saying is if you know, I get the elite guys, right? But if I'm Osiah Sellers, mm-hmm. I get, like, you want to take your shot at it, right? Or if you're Kijani Wright.
Yep.
But it's just your chances of making big money are pretty slim. Mm-hmm. In basketball. It's just probably not going to happen. You might make some money, but you're not going to make big money. Right? Because honestly, if Osiah Sellers or Kijani Wright was going to make big money, they probably already would be, like, have developed by now, right? Like, mm-hmm. the people who make it are the ones, like, very few guys sort of muddle through their first 2 years and then suddenly explode as a junior. St. Thomas being an exception, of course. But very few of these guys actually, you know, make this big jump their junior and senior years to the point where they're going to be NBA players or European players. And I'm just like, you know, I'm not trying to sound like a fuddy-duddy, because I know, you know, there's all these guys who are trying to get back to this old way of doing things. And I don't care about the way of doing things. I'm just saying, like, from a practical standpoint, if you're going to enter a university, I mean, you should still, like, you know, take advantage of it when you're there. Is that crazy?
No. And on that point, does USC still honor that thing where, you know, athletes can come back to school at any time?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, my gosh, how perfect is that for this, where, you know, I think I think at least 3 of the kids, if I now include Agbo that we've talked about today, this is their 3rd school. What a selling point that is. I'm sure they've got to be, that's got to be in some of their minds. Just like,
yeah,
I play here and I can take 2 or 3 years to finish my degree, take as long as Backstrom did to get his.
The ages of between 18 and 22 are pretty fun times in your life. And these guys playing basketball, it's fun. But like, it seems weird to me. I get the guys who spend 3 years somewhere and then like they go their 4th or 5th year to go get a few extra bucks or to like experience something different, right? I get that. That actually makes perfect sense. Or to go get a grad degree. What I don't get is those guys. I don't get like Trey White. Like Trey White goes to USC and then Louisville and then Illinois. Like, what are you doing? Like what? How do you think this reflects on you as far as like?
Didn't he also, not to pick on him, but didn't he also never play for the same high school for consecutive years?
Yeah, it's possible. I'm pretty sure. Like, but it's similar in high school. This whole thing where these guys are like transferring. I'm like, what about? I'm just thinking from a quality of life standpoint. Don't you get tired of Don't you get tired of moving every year? Like, why would you like college can be fun, and it can be really fun for a Division I student athlete who's adored on campus, and obviously it's going to happen wherever you go. But like, and it just seems a shame, just because it's like college is fun. I mean, why wouldn't you want to go have?
That's like part 2 to the Animal House. Knowledge is good, and college is fun.
Knowledge is good. Yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to, it's like, again, I'm not trying to be a fuddy-duddy or get off my lawn type of person. It's just like, I just can't imagine like knowing, like being an 18-year-old kid and having it be almost May and not, and you could go to like, 10 schools or 20 schools if you want to, and still not knowing like where you're going to go. Like, don't you have to like, don't you have to like pack and get your stuff, decide like, don't you have to get like housing? You know what I mean? Like I guess everything's done for you now, but it just seems, I don't know. It's strange. It's this brave new world.
Yeah. Aside from that, the points that you make though, I think if you are looking at academics, I don't know if USC is at like one extreme end of the spectrum when it comes to academic support for student athletes.
Yeah.
But I think that they do make it a lot easier than if you or I were to make the trek from school A to BC.
Yeah, and you notice how nobody's ever ineligible anymore. Have you noticed that?
Oh it's a free for all.
And there's another question from the board from Bulletproof Tiger. He says, "Do you think we can be competitive in the Big Ten with a roster that looks like it will be a Group of 5 all-star team of sorts?" I think so, because like the best guys in these Group of 5 leagues are just as good as most of the good guys in the Power 5 conferences. If you took a Power 5 all-star team and played a Group of 5 all-star team, or let's not even say that. Let's say if you took a really good Group of 5 team, let's say you took Connecticut. That's the best team. And they played against a all-star team from the Group of 5, like the best players, the best 5. I'm pretty sure that team would probably win 50% of the time against Connecticut. Right now it would be because it's an all-star team, right? And it's like if they had took the time to because you're looking at the very best of that group, whereas Connecticut is, each one of their guys is not the very best of that group. All right. Well, I think that'll just about do it on this episode of the Dunk City Podcast. Thanks for listening, and we got all kinds of news breaking on USCbasketball.com. Mark, I'm going to say fight on. Do you have anything else to add?
As always, we appreciate you listening, and fight on, everyone.